Yes! 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 We got it, baby! We got it! We got it! Woo! Woo! We got it! Yes! Yes! Again! That's a 3! You gotta be kidding me! Up and through here. And there's another one! That's number... You gotta be kidding me!
Michigan Snow Forecast Gold Standard on Facebook and on YouTube. Give me a like here on Facebook. Look for this icon and this page right here, Michigan Snow Forecast Gold Standard. We're going to get into our initial preliminary look at the upcoming 2023-2024 winter, as it could be a wild winter with multiple variations and patterns taking place during the course of the winter, as the Farmer's Almanac has put out their preliminary forecast, which calls for cold and average snow in the Midwest, unseasonably cold, stormy in the South, cold, stormy in the Great Lakes, cold and snowy and frosty in the Northeast. But there are several different things that take effect and that have an overall large-scale impact on the North American and lower 48 winter, and that is the El Nino Southern Oscillation Index. Do we have an El Nino or a La Nina? We're going to have an El Nino this year, but there are multiple different types of El Ninos, and one is a Modoki El Nino, right? Otherwise known as a Central Pacific El Nino, where the warm waters and the sea surface temperatures are above normal around the date line and just to the east, centered about 160 west. And then it's got a colder pool even farther west of the date line at about 120 east. And then if you get over near South America, right at the coast, it's got an area of sea surface temperatures that are below normal, and it's got the Central Pacific warmer than the Eastern Pacific. Comparing the two types of El Ninos, the top screen here is the sea surface temperatures of a Modoki or Central Pacific El Nino, where Niño 3-4 at the top is warmer than Niño 1-2 at the bottom, and it's centered about 160 west, extending to about 140 west, and it starts to taper off, right? And underneath there, you got a traditional Eastern Pacific El Nino, where Niño 1-2 is much warmer than Niño 3-4, centered about 80 west, right up against the coast of South America. Looking at NOAA's description of a Modoki El Nino, and it states that it's different from a traditional El Nino because the sea surface temperature warming is largely in the central equatorial Pacific region instead of it being in the eastern equatorial Pacific region. Recent studies show that Eastern Pacific El Ninos have become less frequent, and a different kind of El Nino has become more common during the late 20th century, in which warmer sea surface temperatures in the Central Pacific are flanked on the east and west by cooler sea surface temperatures. This type of El Nino is termed the Central Pacific El Nino, or the dateline El Nino. Modoki, or warm pool, differs from Eastern Pacific El Ninos in both the location of the maximum sea surface temperature anomalies and tropical mid-latitude teleconnections, which the mid-latitude teleconnections are main drivers over a short period of time during the wintertime months in the Northern Hemisphere, being December to February. The EPO is a large-scale, short-term player and driver of North America in the wintertime, and a negative EPO, you get a high pressure center just south of Alaska and low pressure off to the southeast of Hawaii, which blocks the Pacific winds from crashing into the west coast and directs a northwest flow and allows the Arctic air from the north to pour in south into the midsection of the country, the Midwest, the plains, and the Great Lakes, and allows for snowier, colder than normal conditions. Positive phase of the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, or the warm phase, has a large area of low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska and Canada, and allows the Pacific jet to crash into the west coast and bringing the trade winds out of the southwest, which is relatively mild air across lower 48, and it keeps the cold air trapped up in northwest Canada and Alaska, and it allows for a milder than normal conditions across areas east of the Rockies, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, the South, and the Northeast when you have a positive phase of the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. Taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies and trends over the past 90 days, you can see the El Nino continues to develop with the warm sea surface temperatures coming to the surface off the coast of South America, propagating towards the west, towards the date line. And then also, if you look up in the Northeast Pacific, we have what looks to be a cold PDO signature right now, and we are in a cold PDO where you get a cold ring of water in the Gulf of Alaska stretching down northwest Canada, the west coast of the United States, and back out towards Hawaii like you see now, and what you would like to see. And that promotes a trough in the Gulf of Alaska, which keeps the cold air bundled up in northwest Canada and Alaska. We would like to see a warm pool develop there. Taking a look at the sea surface temperature configurations of a positive or warm phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, you get colder than normal sea surface temperatures north of Hawaii and northwest of Hawaii, and then you get above normal sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Alaska stretching down the west coast of northwest Canada, the west coast of the United States, and that above normal sea surface temperature rings around and stretches out towards Hawaii. A cold PDO, or a negative phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, which we are currently in, and they usually run about 20 to 25 years long. They spike warm and cold in intervals during those periods, but you can see it's the opposite, where you have a warm pool just to the north of Hawaii and to the northwest, and then you have a cold ring of sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Alaska, down northwest Canada coast, the western part of the United States, and out stretching towards Hawaii. Looking at the temperature anomalies with this teleconnection, that is a big driver in the wintertime. A negative phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation has the cold air locked up in northwest Canada and Alaska, and it has it primarily above normal east of the Rockies, the Great Lakes, the south, the southeast, and the northeast. But contrary, a positive phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation has it warm in northwest Canada and cold in the Great Lakes, the south, the southeast, and the northeast. Looking at the average temperature anomalies in the lower 48 for an eastern Pacific or traditional El Nino sees the southern portion of the United States and the southwest below normal, with the storm track and the Pacific jet crashing into the west coast, and the northern part of the United States, the central part, the Great Lakes, and the northeast are above normal. A Modoki El Nino temperature anomalies across the lower 48 are similar but subtly different, as in a Modoki or Central Pacific El Nino, the jet still likes to crash into the southwest at times, but likes to allow cold air to infiltrate the eastern Great Lakes, the northeast, and the mid-Atlantic, with a storm track that likes to come up out of the south and travel and traverse up the east coast and provide snow and colder than normal conditions. Taking a look at one more teleconnection, this is the Pacific North American Oscillation, and when it's positive, it promotes a lot of ridging in northwest Canada and blocks the warm Pacific air and likes to get a northwest flow, as you can see right here, with the higher than normal heights up in northwest Canada and Alaska, and lower than normal heights in the eastern part of the United States, as a northwest flow is able to dominate and allows the cold air out of the far north to infiltrate and make inroads in on the eastern part of the United States. Conversely, when you have a negative PNA, or Pacific North American Oscillation, it allows for troughiness in northwest Canada and along the west coast, and promotes a southwest flow aloft in the eastern part of the United States for warmer than normal conditions. As we wind down this video, the purpose of this video was an initial look at the overall sea surface temperature conditions, because that has a major role on the North American winter, especially for those of you concerned in the lower 48, as it is more than just the El Nino Southern Oscillation Index, whether we're in an El Nino or La Nina. There's multiple different shorter term teleconnections that play a significant large driver in the pattern over short durations during the wintertime months in North America. And I wanted to make this video to just educate you, if you haven't heard of these teleconnections, to give you more of an understanding on it's not just because we're having a blowtorch winter or a very cold Arctic winter and a severe winter. It's because there are a lot of short-term drivers and long-term drivers of the regional climate during the wintertime, especially, that affect North America and the lower 48. And we're going to start updating this twice a month to take a look and to see the trends in the sea surface temperatures and whether that promotes bullishness for winter across the lower 48 or bearishness or warmer than normal conditions. Like, subscribe, and share to my growing, fast, beautiful audience. Peace and love.